Hey everyone, me Kevin here. One of the three major hurdles in Congress has just been closed. It is the smallest of the three hurdles, and it is keeping the government funded through December via a stopgap measure. The vote in the Senate today was 65 to 35, and it is wildly expected to pass the House very quickly, and Joe Biden is expected to sign it. Today is September 30th, so we do expect to literally avert a government shutdown just hours before the government shutdown would take place, which would immediately lead to thousands of government workers being furloughed. The bill also included $28.6 billion in emergency disaster aid and $6.3 billion to help resettle Afghan evacuees here in the United States, obviously to help them transition and get situated and get them taken care of. A lot of these, of course, contractors are people who had helped the U.S. government while we were in Afghanistan. Now, this was just one out of three issues. And again, like I said, keeping the government funded via our budget is the smallest of the three issues. We have a very big next issue coming up. It is the October 18th X date. It's called X date because October 18th is a little fluid. It is literally the date that we will officially no longer be able to afford paying for things like Social Security payments, payments for child tax credits, payments on our treasury bonds. That is the day the government would default on its obligations if we do not extend the debt ceiling. Obviously, the debt ceiling is a huge political hot button, with Republicans saying there's no way we are going to vote for increasing the debt ceiling. Democrats can do that via budget reconciliation, which they can do. However, Democrats only have one punch left with a budget reconciliation tool, and they really want to use this for the $3.5 trillion infrastructure plan. Now, those are the leftover two issues. The problem with this, though, is Joe Manchin, it was just discovered, has a whole set of very specific lists or demands, so to speak, that was just discovered from July 28th in an apparent and potential agreement between Chuck Schumer and Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin outlined what his demands were July 20th. This document was just discovered today. Politico got a leaked copy of this, and Joe Manchin demands that the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package actually have a top line of $1.5 trillion. Now remember, we've got three things here, and I just want to show you how we check these boxes, okay? So right here, this is Gov funded, all right? This is what expires on September 30th. This is pretty much all but complete. Then we have the debt ceiling. This is what I said about no Social Security payments, child tax care credits, stimulus payments, government payments, things that are important to the functioning of our government, right? This is not done yet. So this is like crisis mode because this needs to be done by October 18th. Then we have that $3.5 trillion infrastructure package. And Joe Manchin has been a notorious opponent of this. In fact, yesterday we went through a very long statement from Joe Manchin explaining how he thinks there are vengeful tax increases in this bill on wealthy people to pay for handouts that people don't particularly need. So he's had some pretty choice words about this package. And now we have a little bit more of an interesting insight into what Joe Manchin's priorities are. This all comes as at the same time Joe Biden and Jen Psaki say they will do whatever is possible to make sure that this $3.5 trillion package gets complete, because ultimately this right here, sorry, I'm highlighting the debt ceiling. This right here is one of the core tenets of Joe Biden's economic plan, his Build Back Better plan. He doesn't get really far without the $3.5 trillion package. In fact, without the $3.5 trillion package, he risks losing the $1 trillion hard infrastructure package. So here are some of the demands that Joe Manchin has. He says he wants to begin talk on this particular $3.5 trillion bill no earlier than October 1st, because he wants enough economic data to sort of make up his mind on this. He also wants funds in the legislation not to start going into the economy until COVID money has been spent. Now, this is very interesting because this bill already will begin to tax people day one, but won't actually start benefiting the economy probably for 2 to 10 years out, solely because when you have an infrastructure spending bill, it takes time for projects to actually get approved, planned, and to get the money into the economy. So that might not be an issue either way. Then he wants the Federal Reserve to end quantitative easing. Now, I don't think this is him saying, let's pressure the Fed to end quantitative easing, which they're doing anyway via the taper. I think this is more kind of like as a condition, or like in order for me to even be okay with this, the Fed needs to stop pumping money into the economy because he's worried about inflation. The Fed has already talked about starting this taper process to eliminate the money printing that they're doing, the bond buying they're doing, $120 billion per month, and they expect to complete that taper by the middle of 2022. So I expect this is probably not something that's super high on Joe Manchin's priority list because they've already announced that they're going to begin tapering. Spending conditions. He says he wants things to be means tested and have guardrails on new spending. I expect this is probably so that couples making $200,000 a year or $300,000 a year don't get like free preschool or the child tax credit, which they might otherwise get. I expect this is kind of where his priorities lay. It's kind of like, well, do they really need that extra money, right? Like, let's test that and evaluate. And this is the same thing as sort of saying like, hey, let's make sure with programs that we have caps on where we contribute to help people. So for example, this could be rent relief. Like, hey, are we good with where the cap is on how much money you can have to get rent relief, right? No handouts or transfer payments. Now, this is very interesting. This is basically a way of saying no stimulus checks, but the child tax credit could also fall under this, which is very interesting that a child tax credit is a form of a transfer payment, and it's possible that Joe Manchin could take beef with this particularly here today. Then we've got the inclusion of the Senate Bill 1783 budgeting for opioid addiction act, the Lifeboat Act. I'll break that down along with the sole ENR jurisdiction here. As part of this, there's the Lifeboat Act. This is one of Joe Manchin's demands. It's basically to provide and expand access to substance use treatment. It would establish a fee on certain prescription pain pills so that way they can pay for this treatment and pay for helping babies with neonatal abstinence syndrome as well. Babies affected essentially by opioid addictions because perhaps their mother was addicted while they were in the womb. There would be some reports required. Joe Manchin wants sole ENR jurisdiction. So just so you know, the ENR is the United States Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, and Manchin is the chairperson for this. And basically, he wants to be the boss when it comes to these sorts of issues in the Senate. He's also looking for CCUS, which stands for Carbon Capture and Storage, and wants to make sure that coal and natural gas companies can get a tax credit to capture some of their carbon. So basically incentivize oil or natural gas developers or fossil fuel burners to clean up their energy by giving them an opportunity for tax credits rather than just punishing and saying, that's it, you guys need to, we're shutting down all oil and natural gas. Basically, what he's trying to create is the opportunity for natural gas to become a transition fuel. Because this is something I've talked a lot about on the channel too, is that you can't really expect to go from natural gas and coal and oil immediately to EVs, like electric vehicles, and everything wind and solar, without having some kind of cleaner fossil fuel, or as clean as possible fossil fuel, to transition you to get there. This is like what they do in California. They're like, oh yeah, we're not going to allow you to update your natural gas fossil fuel burning facility because it's not 100% green. Well, how do you expect to get to 100% green when we can't go 100% green tomorrow, but we need more energy? Like, what are we going to do? Just cripple the energy grid and cause more fires in California? In some cases, and I've spoken to the natural gas industry about this quite at length, and there are some instances where the natural gas industry today could make burning natural gas 8 times more efficient today. All they need is the permit to be able to do it. But the government says, nah, if we authorize that permit, that means we're supporting natural gas and we don't want to do that. It's like, it means we burn less natural gas. Nah, it's not 100% clean. Like, there's some things that are so straight up dumb in our government, and I think we can all agree on that one. But anyway, vehicle fuel tax credits shall not be limited to electric vehicles, must include hydrogen. This is an interesting argument by Joe Manchin that he's trying to include hydrogen in this. I don't mind that because hydrogen vehicles generally are battery electric. They are just the batteries are just regenerated with hydrogen fuel cells that you could fill up kind of like gas, and then when that hydrogen is converted into water and releases energy, you charge your battery, and then you drive a battery electric vehicle. It just has a hydrogen fuel cell built in it. It's kind of cool. If tax credits are included for wind and solar, then fossil tax credits should not be repealed. This is a big issue right here because Joe Biden really wants to end tax credits for fossil fuels. That's a big deal for him. Other conditions: any revenue exceeding 1.5 trillion shall be used for deficit reduction. So basically, if they make more money from increasing taxes, we should be paying off our debt. I think a lot of people would actually agree with paying off the debt anyway. Then we've got a corporate tax rate of 25%, corporate domestic minimum tax of 15%. So a minimum tax on corporations he's actually okay with. Corporate tax, he's okay with bumping this, not to the full like 28% or 26.9%, but 25%. He's okay with the increase on the top tier income tax rate to 39.6%, about a 1.6% bump. And he's okay with raising the capital gains tax rate to 28% all in. This is less than taxing it as ordinary income, which obviously could be as high as 40% here. He's got some other items in here, but basically says Joe Manchin does not guarantee that he will vote for the final reconciliation legislation if it exceeds the conditions outlined in this agreement. And Chuck Schumer here, it looks like it's signed between Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer. What apparently it says under there is, we'll try to dissuade Joe on some of these. It's written in kind of funny handwriting down here. But yeah, kind of odd that it's signed. I thought maybe when I first saw that would be some kind of like out, like, hey, you know, sure, I'll do my best. But maybe it's just sort of like an agreement. Oh, well, I guess he's saying an agreement to start talking, right? So it's not like a contract. It's just like, yeah, look, we agree to start talking around some of these parameters and working out some of these things. So it's interesting. We'll see how that goes. But remember our pillars here, folks, okay? So government's now funded. We've got the debt ceiling, the $3.5 trillion bill. This is what this is about. The other box is the bipartisan infrastructure bill. This one is the $1 trillion. We kind of expect this to get passed, though. It might even get passed today. We'll see. But this is not such a big deal. The real two big deals are right here and right here. So we'll see how it goes. If you found this helpful, get yourself life insurance in as little as 5 minutes by going to metkevin.com/life. And folks, we will see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Goodbye.